This conference will now be recorded.
Okay. Wendy Hess.
President, representing Communication Centers.
Travis Solomon. I don't think he's going to be here.
Yes.
Bridget Edson.
President, representing EMS.
Mindy Benson. She's not going to be here either.
I come with my own theme music. I'm here.
Doesn't matter. Okay. Michelle Bischoff.
Present, representing Fire Department Professional Chief, and I work for the City of Des Moines.
Curtis Wooten.
Present, representing volunteer fire departments.
Dave Ness. Dan Schaefer.
Present, representing municipal police.
Dan Fank. I don't think he's going to be here. Jeff Vanderwater.
Present, representing sheriffs.
Rhonda Broaddus. Anna Voss.
Present, representing the Iowa Law Enforcement Academy.
Cindy Height.
Present, representing the Iowa Department of Human Services.
Dan Brown.
Present, representing Iowa Department of Transportation.
Michael Strausser.
Present, representing Iowa Department of Natural Resources.
Keith Hope.
Present, Iowa Department of Public Safety.
Patrick Updike.
President, Iowa Department of Corrections.
Blake Jerushi.
Present, representing Iowa Department of Homeland Security and Emergency Management.
And Jessica Turba. Let's see, she's on. Is there any legislative members?
Jessica Green, Senate.
And we do have a quorum. Thank you.
Representative Ross Wilburn.
We've got Senator Green and Representative Wilburn.
Thank you both for being here, appreciate it. Thank you all for taking the time to be here and to make the trip to Adele, so we could all put names and faces together and start to build our internal relationships within the board. Is much appreciated. I'll entertain a motion for approval of today's agenda. Second?
Who was first?
Bridget. I'll second. Great, I have a first and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Entertain a motion for the approval of the minutes from the July 13th meeting.
Michael, motion.
Second?
Second.
I have a first and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. SWIC report.
Thank you, Bishop. The Rural Emergency Medical Communications Demonstration Project grant that we were working on the last 6 weeks was submitted before the deadline. Award should be announced the end of September. I'll pass on any information that I receive on that. Thanks to all who put in an effort on that big list. There was a lot of work put into that, and I greatly appreciate all the help. Just a reminder to everyone that the comment period is open through August 15th for that proposed policy statement. You can find that online for the 700 megahertz conventional channel update with discipline-specific encryption. There have been a few comments submitted. You can review those there also. The SCIP scoping call, we've been talking about SCIP review the last couple of months, and that is beginning that process that will take 4 to 8 months. ECC Myers will talk more about that in his presentation, so I'll move on from that. The radio cache was utilized during RAG ride, a total of 22 radios, as well as miscellaneous equipment that goes along with those. And also the mobile command units were deployed to various entities to help with interoperability during that event successfully, from what I understand. We did have a legislative meeting with the Republican caucus. Some very interested people who work on the risk committee came and learned about Isicsb from us, and we had a really good conversation. I think that's important to start those conversations now as we look at the SCIP and long-term funding opportunities. That is all I have for my report now until the training.
Any questions for the quick? Thank you, Haley. 911 Council Report, Program Manager Garushi.
Thank you, Chair. We did have a fairly significant 911 council meeting just prior to this. If you are interested in things like financials of the program, I would encourage you to go back and watch that. It is posted to our website as well as our YouTube page for the 911 Council. A couple other updates that I've been kind of bringing you along with throughout the last couple months. We have fully enabled geospatial routing of 911 calls. That was delayed about a month, but that has now been completed. So, you know, there may certainly be areas where you're receiving 911 calls that you maybe didn't used to. That's because we're going away from the tower routing and using GIS routing instead. For the last year or so, we've been working on a pilot project with 3 911 answering points to do transfers to 988, the National Suicide Hotline. So that pilot is underway. There have been successful transfers from 911 to 988. The easy part has been the technical component. The part that we want to make sure to refine and get right is the best practices and the protocols involved in when to transfer a 911 call over to 988. So because where we're at with the pilot, we're kind of ready for the next steps. We're ready to look at bringing other PSAPs on board with being able to transfer to 988. So we have sent out a survey to kind of gauge attitudes and readiness of who might be ready to do this next elsewhere in the state. So that was sent out earlier this week. Please participate in that. Is my goal and vision that eventually at some point everyone will be able to make that transfer. Obviously we're going to focus on the ones that are ready and want to do that first. An update on the number of PSAPs in the state. Last month, if you remember, Perry PD folded into Dallas County Sheriff's Office. This month, Iowa Falls PD folded into Hardin County Sheriff's. That brings the current total to 110 PSAPs. Finally, during the 911 Council meeting, we had a presentation on potential statewide training. So if you know or you remember, a lot of times I'll talk about what training was approved. We are able to operate a training fund that's about $100,000 every year to do kind of over-the-top 911 telecommunicator training. The last couple of years we haven't quite spent all of that, so this is an opportunity that would kind of help spend some of that funding. Right now it's just, again, in the information gathering phase. We want opinions, we want thoughts before we pull the trigger on enabling that contract. So a survey, we like surveys, will be going out to kind of gauge what people think about that concept. It's something that we haven't done before, but again, we kind of have that potential. So that'll be hitting the street, that survey, later this week as well. That ends my brief. I would take any questions.
Any questions for Program Manager Garushi? Great, thanks, Blake. User Group Committee, Chair Hess.
The User Group Committee met on July 20th. There were no updates from any of the regions, and then we just reviewed the applications that are later on the agenda for approval. That wasn't a lot of discussion. That's all I have.
Thank you. Are there any questions for the user group? Okay, thank you, Wendy. That brings us to the Finance Committee. Chair Brown.
Thank you, Chair Bischoff. Finance met very briefly on 8/1 and reviewed the financial numbers. We had our transfer in for fiscal year '24. I believe that is $115,661. We're sitting at $228,000 total. And I don't believe we've reviewed the July 23 final numbers yet. I'll take any questions.
Any questions for finance? That brings us to the governance committee. Are you ready for your report?
We met on Monday and are making progress on policies, and we look forward to reporting more next week.
And welcome, Major Nutt, to the meeting. Thank you, Dave. Any questions for governance? That brings us to operations. Chair Edson.
Sure, we met July 19th and August 2nd as well. We spent quite a bit of time discussing policies and standards around the school radios that were distributed by the Governor's School Safety Bureau. At this time, we decided that they're not fixed radios necessarily, so there should be some direction given to the schools, but that would come not through our board. Otherwise, we have the Carroll County ORAP that's kind of on hold at the moment, just with Greg Bryan vacations and whatnot. We should have more to report on that next week.
Great, thank you. Any questions for operations? Thank you, Bridget. That brings us to Training and Outreach Committee. Ms. Nichols?
Thank you, Chair. I will remind that the Incident Tactical Dispatcher course will be in Potawatomi County, October 3rd through the 6th. There's a 20-student maximum. For that, the registration is live. I received a request today to open it up to Nebraska. It's right on the border there. Probably will do that since I think we have 6 or 8 registered so far. We might as well have a full class. But if anybody's interested in Iowa, please fill out that job form and upload your certificates. The COMT that was postponed has now been rescheduled at ILEA, October 23rd to the 27th. That registration is live, and there are seats available. There's an 8 minimum, and we've almost reached that. I have sent out a few different nationwide links. Maybe you've seen them. Kansas will be hosting an OnStar training and demonstration session October 24th. Looks very interesting from their flyers. If you want to take a look at that, it is live in Topeka. If anyone's interested, their SWIP, Jason Bryant, opens up to Region 7 states. I have, and some of the board have already registered for the 5th Annual District of Columbia Interoperability Summit. It will highlight the 10-year anniversary of the Boston Marathon, but I also believe there'll be a lot of good information that we can take from that. So if anyone has time to jump in and out of that, I think it would be beneficial. Also, we shared a all hazards INTD and INCM awareness overview, 4 hours of those courses, 4-hour overview of those courses on looking at some lessons learned. There's 2 sessions still available, August 30th at 1 p.m. and September 19th at 9 a.m. So those, I can't remember if you have to register, you can just join the link, but if anybody wants those, I'll send them out. And then just a reminder that we have been working on training standard modules. Yes, training modules for our standards. They're on our website. They can be available 24 hours a day through the links, and share those with your end users. They might find them valuable. There's a pursuit module. There's a number of them available, and we're updating the status board module. And that's all from the training committee.
Thank you. Any questions for the training or outreach committee? Thank you, Haley. That brings us to the technology committee. Chair Fitch.
Thanks. Technology met on the 27th of July and 1st of August. We did another review of the TIC-T and IFOG. to that and found a few corrections that needed to be made, so we sent that back for those corrections. We did get some comments, the 30-day comment regarding the discipline-specific encryption on the conventional channels that are out there. We're looking into those comments. It's really just nothing more than just the naming of the channels and how it's going to appear on the display. We'll review it, look through it. If we can make those changes, we will. The other part of that discussion was looking into setting NAC and talk group information for those channels. More than likely, we're going to stick with the talk group and NAC codes that are already on those existing conventional resources. But I think it's possible that we may come up with a procedure or something that allows the county to do something on their own with those NAC codes, as long as it's reflective of their county number and those types of things. So that way they're not just limited to one or two items. They kind of can go off on their own. And that's as it relates to adding those 6 additional channels to that group of frequencies, the 3 that are already there. The last thing we did was we just had some discussions on loading and capacity issues. We didn't really go anywhere with it. We just talked about it and discussed some of the potential for those 2 things. And that's it. Thanks.
Thank you. FirstNet Broadband Committee, has Mindy joined us?
No, she won't be here. She sent me a quick email to report for her. So the FirstNet Broadband Committee met on Tuesday this week. There were no action items. FirstNet partners will provide briefings later during this meeting and make an announcement. We're excited to be working with a familiar face who will be introduced a little bit later. There was one thing Jason Hoffman brought up, that he had received some really good help from the FirstNet Authority and his AT&T contact, John Olson or Tyler, when he brought some concerns to them. And so he was just very thankful for the quick response by the people that we have in our meetings and stuff. So I wanted to pass that along. And that's all we have.
Fantastic. Any questions for the FirstNet Broadband Committee? Other reports, information sharing among board members. Does anyone have anything before we dive into the list that's before us? Anything to share? I have 2 things. One, we have made an update to the ARPA letter. We will now be going forward with a request for cybersecurity and channel packs to increase capacity at towers that are in need of capacity enhancement to the tune of about $7 million. That letter is still being drafted, but we are preparing to move forward with that, and we'll take action between this meeting and the next meeting as far as sending it on to the governor's office. So I just wanted everyone to be aware of that. And secondly, we have been, the board has been approached by Tom Conley's legal representation, and we're working with our AG representative to work through that process. Just wanted you to be aware that we have received a notice, and we're working through the process with our attorney, Jeffrey Peter-Zellick, who we'll introduce here in a moment, just for everyone's awareness. Any questions on those items? All right, next I'll turn it over to Captain Pierce for the ICN circuit billing, just some understanding.
Well, before I say anything, I'd like, Haley, do you want to go ahead and just brief everybody on what you have?
Sure, yeah.
Open it up.
Yeah, sorry, dude.
No, fine.
No problem.
Can you guys speak up a little bit? And
I'll try.
Maybe hear back.
Okay. So we wanted to bring your attention to something that's happening between DPS and ICN for awareness in case of questions or concerns. Over the years, DPS has been paying for the backhaul circuit connections into Isicsb for a number of PSEs. This was done because there was initially no method for ICN to bill those agencies directly, and there were funds available for that. In April of 2021, Governor Reynolds adopted House File 805, which is an act relating to the services provided by the Iowa Telecommunications and Technology Commission. So with that act, there's now a route for ICN to bill those PSAPs directly. And now, 2 years after the act was signed, DPS is going to implement those changes, and there are 40 PSAPs that currently have those connections that DPS is paying for. And DPS can no longer sustain the growing costs. Payments will not end until June 30th of 2024, so there's budgeting time. Later this month, a letter will be going out to those 40 PSAPs explaining which circuits this affects and the cost to the PSAPs. That will begin July 1st, 2024. The letter will include a link which the PSAP will need to provide the billing information. So when those are received, please click that link and fill that out. For awareness purposes, there are only 2 PSAPs that have 3 of these circuits. The others either have 1 or 2. Each connection costs $226 a month. The specifics for each agency will be in their letter. These circuits are not for the other ICN services that a PSAP might utilize, like the NCIC system or shared services. It's only those backhaul circuits into Isicsb. If your agency receives a letter, again, please click those links and fill out that quick form about who should be getting those bills. If there's any questions, Captain Pierce is here, and also we have Stephanie DeVault from ICN to direct those at.
Great, thank you so much. Are there any questions?
Yeah, just to clarify, I think I understood it correctly. This is not an Isicsb thing. This is just, we're using this forum to share the information because some of the players may be the same, and because it was a backhaul that was integral to Isicsb. But this has been something handled by DPS. The change is a state change, no Isicsb decision, just information sharing, correct?
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Yep. 100% correct. Thank you. Any other questions regarding that discussion? Great. Thank you. Next, I'd like to introduce Assistant Attorney General Jeff Peterzelli. He's going to go over board member responsibilities with us. Would you like to do that now, or do you want to wait until the end of the meeting?
Whatever works best for you folks. Everything's running along pretty smoothly, so maybe we should just finish business and then.
That was kind of my inclination, is that way if there are individuals that want to depart the meeting, they can, or stick around and hear the board member responsibilities. So thank you. Is everyone good with making that slight adjustment? Isicsb System Administrator Report. Scott Richardson or me? Hi, Connie.
Hi, this is Connie. I have the report for July. The radios, we have 33,458 radios. That's up by 259 in June. The push-to-talk were 3,070. That's up by 15 in June. I'm sorry, I mixed this up. The radios were 33,457. Push-to-talks are 3,070. Push-to-talks are 870 push-to-talks. That's up by 134,606. We are continuing to do the 2023 preventive maintenances, and we have about between 5,000 and 6,000 radios on the system at any one time. Is there any questions other than I completely messed up the count?
Oh, good, Connie. Are there any questions for the system administrators? Thank you for your report, Connie. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
FirstNet Authority. We have a new yet familiar face in that role. Tom, I'll let you introduce yourself.
Well, retirement's not really working out for me, so. I was appointed the Region 7 First Ed Authority rep, formerly John Olson, I believe, had your territory from North Carolina. Region 7's been a hole for several years. It was open back when I was still working for DPS, and interested at that time, but the retirement figures didn't come out just right, so I just kind of let the retirement go. But now it took a while, it took 3 years to get it back open again, and so it has always been a goal of mine to be standing here representing the authority. So here I am. I started the 17th of July. I got Kansas, Nebraska, Iowa, and Missouri. I'm just thrilled to see that this is really moving forward here. So I can do the same, help with you with the authority. There's things I can't do. There's things I can do. We'll tell you this. The federal government's a whole lot different than the state government as far as what you can and can't do, and they let you know real quick what you can't do. So I was in Kansas yesterday and gave a presentation down there to a group similar to this association. I'll be doing that presentation for you at some point. I can do it on the RICS, or I can do it at your board meeting. But it's important for you to know the distinct difference between, I'm sure John has explained that, the difference between the authority and the AT&T rep. The authority is the owner of the contract, Department of Commerce. The AT&T rep is our vendor who builds the networks, responsible for building the network and the core and getting new devices. They got to meet a certain subscriber ratio. They're responsible for a certain amount of coverage in the state, in the country. Iowa was, as you know, 5th in the country back a long time ago when we reviewed that broadband committee reviewed that portal and what they promised that they would do for us in 5 years. That 5-year mark hit March 31st of this year. So now we're in negotiations and looking to see if they've met that mark. So that'll end sometime in the next 6 months with a lot more pay grades above me. So that's where we're at. In the future, we're going to be doing, by the end of the year, we're going to be doing what they call a FirstNet progress update with all the states and all of my states. And Iowa's will be with the governor's office and their staff to give Governor Reynolds a report on where we were 5 years ago and where we're at today and what the network looks like. I will tell you, if you get a chance for AT&T to show you a map of what they've done in the 5 years, I seen one the other day and I was blown away at what it was compared to what they have today. You have to see that map because you know as well as I do, coverage is everything. But I will tell you this, that a cellular network is a lot different for coverage than a radio network. You got a half a watt versus different. So, but for what they've done, I've been told that Iowa and Nebraska are one of the most dramatic increases in coverage from where they were to where they're at today. So I'm here for you, public safety, your needs. If AT&T is doing something you don't like, let me know. That's my job. So with that, I'll take questions maybe later or now or whatever you want to do.
We can take questions now, and welcome aboard.
Do that.
Yeah, just wanted to echo, welcome, congratulations. You're always welcome. And one person's opinion would be, instead of doing it at the RIC calls, if you did it at the board level, it would be more efficient for you. Everybody would hear it, and it could still be shared at the RIC level. So that would be one person's opinion.
Yes, absolutely. I concur with that. So we'll work to get that scheduled. We'll work with Haley and Holly and get that scheduled.
There's a lot of good stuff coming down the pike. The new technologies that we're offering, there's stuff that can get you to, there's lots of ways to fill in coverage other than just putting up $1 million tower. There's all kinds of things I can do to help you with that. So if there's dead zones, let me know. I can't tell AT&T put a tower up. I'll get in huge trouble for that. But I can work with you to get that message across to people that can.
Fantastic. Thank you. Any questions for Tom? Excellent. ET&T update. Tyler Richard?
I don't see him on.
Or is Bart on? I think he's still there for me. Is anyone from AT&T on? All right. That brings us to CISA update. Chris?
Thank you, Chair Bischoff. Holly, do you have the slides ready? Super. So good morning, board. I appreciate the time today, as always. This will be my report for the month of August. On the first slide, our new ICTAP catalog has finally been released. This was delayed a couple of months for some internal reviews and discussions, but I'm happy to report that there are 12 new or modified TAs that are now available. Keep in mind, everything in this catalog is available to the state at no cost, and as of this update, should be in excess of 60 different unique service deliveries. A lot of the updates for this year focus on communications cybersecurity through new awareness webinars, a 1-day or a 2-day threat assessment, and in some cases a response plan working group so that you can develop a cyber response plan with assistance from us. We offer 2 types of unique assessments now. One is the full-fledged cyber assessment that aligns with NIST 800-53. And we also offer a rapid assessment that can be done in a matter of weeks that just looks at some key controls that are within NIST. Some of the things I'm most excited about are the follow-ups to that. In the past, we've done a cyber assessment with states and agencies that had critical communications networks, and we left them with the assessment. We now have a post-assessment workshop in which we will go over the results with you and offer 12 weeks of additional advice, guidance, and meet with you to help prioritize any gaps that are found and how maybe to address them going forward to help fortify your networks. We also offer some new plans as well, such as PACE planning when it comes to communications and cyber. This is a unique one, so you start thinking about your primary mode of communication, alternative, contingency, and emergencies. We can help walk you through that plan as well. We also offer some communications-focused active shooter workshops now. And again, all these are available at no cost along with the standard courses that Iowa's been utilizing for years. So this catalog is now released and available on our website for download. Your SWIC has a copy of it, and you can roll through and look at what may be interesting for you all for the next calendar year. On the next slide, I do want to give everybody an update on the SAFECOM nationwide survey. This has been extended to September 29th. Iowa's response rate is exceptional when you stack this up across the country. As of today, Iowa has 64 completed responses. That puts you as 9th in the country. This puts you ahead of New York, Florida, and Pennsylvania, and actually ties you with California. So if you start thinking about the populations of those states, you're punching really, really far above your weight if you just look at population. On the next slide, if you look at states that are similar to you in terms of population, the next closest state, you're beating them by over 20 responses. So again, excellent work by the board, by its membership, by the committees, by the public safety stakeholders in the state of Iowa for making sure your voice is heard. Now, with the extension of the deadline, we still have about 90 or so incomplete surveys out there within Iowa. If you were able to complete all of them, that would basically lock you into the top 10. And keep in mind, this data is used for the next 5 years for things like congressional hearings, the types of services that we may be looking at delivering in the future. So if you know of anybody that has not yet completed their survey, please encourage them to do so because this data does make a huge difference. Again, kudos to everybody in Iowa for making sure your voice is heard nationally. On the next slide, I do want to talk a little bit about the support that we're going to provide for your SCIP update. SCIPs are an extremely high priority in CISA since they set the strategic vision for the state. And at this point, I want to commend Iowa for opening up the SCIP for an update. And one thing I want everybody to consider is to start thinking about strategic goals and objectives that you may want to have incorporated into this document. It's not for us to tell you what those should be as this is your document, but start thinking about the things that are important to you when it comes to interoperable communications in the state. Also think about how you want this process scaled to fit your collective needs. Different states tend to need different things from the SCIP and the workshops associated with that. So start thinking about how you want this delivery done. In the past, Iowa has also been very good about doing a SWOT analysis that looks at strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. Iowa has had that in their SCIP now for over 5 years, and we can help you update that if you want as well. Reach out to your SWIC, Haley Nichols, or myself with any questions, but we're happy to help support you throughout this journey that you're going on now with updating this document. New products from CISA on the next slide. Our strategic plan for cybersecurity has been released. There's 3 key hallmarks to this, and 2 of them you can think about as a state collectively today. One is how do you address those immediate threats, and how do you harden the terrain that you're operating under to make sure that your networks are secure. One thing CISA is looking at doing collectively across the country is thinking about how we drive security at scale, so the goods and services you contract with in the future are more secure, basically, quote unquote, out of the box. So this plan is available for reading and download online. If you want a copy of it sent directly to you, just let me know and I'll get it to you. On the next slide, we have also a new product release which looks at vulnerability and risk assessments, over 121 unique assessments, and it looks at critical vulnerabilities and pathways that have been identified. This is a joint product with CISA and the U.S. Coast Guard Cyber Command, and really the findings from this is that valid account exploitation has been the biggest thing that's been hitting government agencies and public safety agencies for the last year or so. Spear phishing, PowerShell, remote desktop protocols, they all show up on this list as well, but the big thing is the valid account exploitation has been identified as the critical vulnerability for right now. This work product is available in two forms. There's a full-fledged document, which would be great for your information security officers to look at, but there's also an infographic. On the next slide, we have an example of that infographic where we start looking at how are threat actors evading our defenses. And again, valid account exploitation pops up as one of the main ways they do that. This is available for download as well, or if you want it sent directly to you, just let me know and I will get this to you, but this is geared really towards your IT folks that service your agencies. Next slide, some regional news of note. We have a couple of communications unit courses coming up in addition to the ones we're providing for Iowa. We have 2 COMLs coming up in Missouri over the next month or so, and then also an incident tactical dispatcher course that'll be in western Kansas in Dodge City. Other state interoperability boards and committees are meeting in September as well. That's all I have. Chair Bischoff, I can go ahead and take any questions.
Great. Are there any questions for Chris? Great, thank you very much for the very valuable information. I did have one other item that came to mind that I neglected to mention, and that is that there is another opportunity for a SCIP grant. I don't know a ton about it. It came out while I was on vacation and today is first day back. So just be aware that that's out there. We do intend to apply for that grant. Is it an application apply or is it a pass-through?
Yeah, you have to apply for it, and it's for cybersecurity.
So more to come. Do we have are we okay application date-wise?
October.
Okay, good. It'll be on the next agenda then. Old business. Do we have any old business? Moving on to new business. New Isicsb chair approval, Chair Huff.
So we have 5 user applications in front of us today for approval. The first is Ankeny Community School District, which is level 2. The Bramer County Sheriff's Office, which is an update, is level 2. Cass County Public Safety Communications, which is an updated application for level 4. Metro Communications in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, which is level 1. And then Washington County Sheriff's Office in Minnesota, which is also a level 1. Entertain a motion to approve those.
I'll take that as the motion.
Okay, I will make a motion.
So all I need is a second.
Yes.
Nestle second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item B, coordination and licensing of air-to-ground 700 megahertz channels with APCO.
Okay, I'll take this to start, but then I'll probably require Patrick to jump in. So it was brought to our attention that policy 2020-04 was adopted in April of 2021. That is for the adoption of the conventional 700 megahertz air-to-ground channels for use in Iowa. Those frequencies have not yet been licensed, though. So I talked with Dave and Patrick. In the past, Patrick has gone to the board for approval to spend the funds to go ahead and license those frequencies, and then worked with DPS for admin to use their FRN number to make that happen. And then the system administrator will ensure that those licenses are renewed when that is necessary. That process is easy from what I understand. So I had to Google it to find out what the costs are. And there are a couple of different things. APCO has a service you can buy that they'll fill out all of the paperwork for you. Although Patrick said he's done that in the past, so I'm not exactly sure if we need that or not. I think it's something that we could look into.
Well, you have to fill out paperwork to start a coordination process and a licensing process. And once it goes through that coordination process, and they get, what do I want to say, what's the word? Concurrence from adjacent states. Then it goes through RPC and you fill out the paperwork, they push it on to the Federal Communications Commission, and you license those frequencies. You put a contact name and an FRN with that, which would probably be associated with an existing FRN, and the contact that's currently on that FRN. And then every 10 years, because we know Dave will be here in 10 years, he has to renew that license. So it does cost. It's not extremely expensive, but so you would basically be paying for not only the process of getting it coordinated, but getting it licensed too. So.
And these prices that Holly has up there are not coordination and licensing fees. They're the fees to fill out the application. If you would hire APCO to do that. I don't know if that's necessary. And then,
This lake?
yeah, that's fine. It's just a service that they provide. And I haven't looked into it enough to know if we need that service.
They'll tell you. I mean, I wanted to call them anyways, just to ask them questions, but basically you're gonna pay for court. It's just easier to have somebody like APCO do the coordination and licensing process because we're all busy.
And Holly, that second, could you pull up that second one just to show the fees for that? This? Yeah, down below it shows the fees for coordination and licensing.
How many channels are we looking at?
What is that? How many air-to-ground channels are there?
There's eight or something, I think.
I can pull it up.
I think it's 8 or 10.
Yeah, maybe.
Is it where the one is?
Yeah, right up, a little bit more up. There, this page is the.
8.
Nope, right there, we were on it.
It's right there. Okay. So it'd be the new major modification size, correct? Because we haven't licensed them, so they would be new licenses, but how I'm interpreting what
They have not been licensed.
that would be a modification, it's a new set.
Yeah, I'm gonna say they're probably gonna assign a new call sign to it and attach an existing FRN. Does that sound about right to you, Dave? Yeah.
So I believe it falls in that $60 per frequency, 150.
So it would be one application and then either 60 times 8 or 10, whatever the number is.
There's 8 pairs.
8 pairs.
And who would be making the application / paying the bill? Would that be a system administrator on behalf of Isics? And if so, is it's very modest amount of money to have the professionals do it instead of our volunteers who are very knowledgeable but have many other responsibilities. Has it gotten that far that we've talked to the Finance Committee if in fact it's a Isics expenditure, or with this very modest amount, is it not even necessary to have a motion?
That was the purpose of all of this, was to get approval from the board, for the board to pay for that expense. So hopefully that helps.
Yeah, if you, as a subject matter expert working on this, if you make a motion, I'd be happy to second, or vice versa, whatever. It seems like money well spent on something that needs to be done.
Well, anybody can like it.
So it's a statewide policy that we already put in place, we just haven't completed the work. And in my area, I've heard a lot from the helicopter services interoperability, so I know it's necessary.
Yeah.
So I think
Well,
we should go ahead and use ASCO to do this.
You're not, anybody can license those frequencies as long as they're part-time licensed, you know. His department, he could license them if he wants to. So, but since we've already got standards and policies and procedures and all that in place for this, might as well finish it. Because at first, honestly, we didn't think you had to license. We just thought you just had to be a part-time license holder. But then it came out that you did, so we just didn't know that.
So I have a motion from Richardson. Do I have a second? I'll second. All those in favor of moving forward and using ASCO to see the licensing across the finish line, signify by saying aye.
Can we get out there just?
Absolutely.
It might be important for us to word this accordingly on the motion.
Okay.
So I don't know, should I back up here a little bit?
So long as we're just open to a friendly amendment.
How would you like this to be worded, Patrick?
Tell you what, why don't you take back your motion and I'll make the motion, because then I'll word it. How's that?
Well, it could just fail.
What's that?
I don't need to rescind it, it could just fail.
However that works.
You can take back your second and it'll fail for lack of a second.
I'll take back my second.
Okay, perfect. So the motion fails for lack of a second.
Okay. So
Floor is
now,
yours.
I'm going to make a motion to go through the process of coordinating and licensing the 700 meg air-to-ground channels through APCO, and have the Isicsb board pay the expense not to exceed $1,000.
Okay. Is there a second to the motion on the floor?
I'm sure 1,000 is enough.
I don't know if that is, because it may be a little bit more than that. If we have 8 pairs and they're 60 something a piece and a couple, I don't know what the coordination fees are. Maybe 1,500 or 2,000.
Okay, I'm going to rescind that.
What is it? That's why I brought
We have
it
for a
up.
line
I'm
item.
not sure which pieces we actually needed.
I'm going to rescind that motion and start over. So I would like to make a motion to go through the coordination and licensing process of the air-to-ground 700 meg channels with APCO, and have the Isicsb board fund that expense not to exceed $2,000.
Is there a second? Okay. Any conversation? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. That brings us to public comment. Is there any public comment? All right, hearing none, we're not going to adjourn because we need to stay in a public meeting because we have a quorum. And I'll turn it over to Assistant AG Peter Selling, and he will tell us all of the other things we should be doing as well.
Thank you for inviting me out to the rural part of our area to come to this meeting. First time I've ever had to punch in an address to my GPS to find a Isicsb meeting, but my role with respect to the board and other boards and commissions I represent is just to simply provide legal advice. This board in particular, it's unique both in its makeup and also unique in its mission, which to some extent presents some unique challenges, a couple of which I'll talk a little bit about today. So as far as commission members go, a lot of you have been around here for a long time. I won't mention how long Patrick's been around, but I've been here for 20 years, and I think I've worked with him the entire time. So, and then there's a lot of new figures as well, new faces involved. And this is probably more directed to some of the newer board members, also probably more directed to people on the board that aren't necessarily directly affiliated with state agencies. As board members or commission members, I guess the four things that you really need to be worried about, concerned about are open records laws, open meetings laws, conflicts of interest, and then also the gift law issues. The first two things I mentioned with respect to open meetings, I don't come to a lot of these meetings, but the meetings I've gone to, everything has been run appropriately, notices have gone out appropriately. You folks generally do a good job of sticking to the agenda. I was starting to get a little worried towards the end there, but so far so good. And so I think that there's really not a whole lot to say about that other than continue doing what you're doing, particularly on notices. There's never been, as far as I know, a complaint made to the Public Information Board or anybody else with respect to this group. So I think that's a real credit to how well things are run. Same for open records requests. I know that we do respond to open records requests and have done so. Have not received any complaints with respect to how those are handled. And again, for both of those issues, particularly open records requests, if there's ever any issue about how you should respond or if you should respond, in what manner you should respond to open records requests, I'm here for that. So those are two issues that we really never have any concerns about. The other issue, and the one issue that I always talk about, because I have some concern about it, and also it could be a concern to the different people, depending on what constituencies you represent. Each one of you come here from a state agency, a local entity, and bring with you your responsibilities to that entity. However, when you're on this board and making board decisions, decisions on behalf of the entire board, you're acting on behalf of the board. You have a fiduciary duty to act in the board's best interest. So you have to set aside whatever you might be wanting to do, thinking about doing with respect to your local agency or your employer, and act on behalf of the board. To not do so presents a conflict of interest situation. Most of those can be resolved in a couple of different ways. One is just to simply talk to me about the situation, and we can determine if there actually is a conflict of interest. If there is, or if there's an appearance of impropriety, you can just recuse yourself from the vote and take care of things that way. But that is something that is a concern. We've had concerns with that issue, even including way back when some litigation over some purchase, while we were contracting with Motorola to go through and do the statewide system. There were some allegations of conflicts of interest and things like that, but we had done everything completely correctly and on the up and up, and nothing ever came of that. But it's very, very, very important to keep that in mind when you're doing board business, is that you are doing the board's business. You're not doing Marshalltown's business or Waterloo's business or anything like that at that particular time. If you have any concerns or questions about that, please let me know and we can talk through that and make sure that there aren't any issues with respect to that. The other issue is, on this board, you're all subject to the gift laws. Most of the people that you're going to come into contact with from outside of this board on a day-to-day basis are going to be vendors that are restricted donors, restricted vendors, or people that you can accept gifts from, people that you can accept your all-expense-paid trip to Hawaii to talk at a conference or something like that. You can't accept the $500 jacket that has something emblazoned on it unless that sort of thing is available to everybody. So you need to be particularly concerned with that. Not really an issue that I've come across a lot with this particular board, but it is a board with with how it touches all of the different governments and governmental subdivisions throughout the state that you need to be concerned about. As I said, if there's any questions about that, let me know. This board is a little bit different than, I should say quite a bit different than most other boards, because you don't have express rulemaking authority, but yet you have the authority to really govern what has become this incredible statewide interoperable communication system, and have done just a tremendous job with how you've set that up. how you've set up the ability to have new people come in, how you analyze those things, the policies that you've adopted to fulfill those things. It's really, in my mind, it continues to amaze me how great this board operates with the limited authority that it has, and has not generated complaints, has not generated a lot of attention throughout state government. And I think that that's a real testament to the folks that are on the board and the people that have come up through the years. Tom Lampy's been involved a long time. Chris, worked with him for over the years. Rick Pierce, people like that have been here for just a long, long time and have really, I think, set this thing up. I remember when we were still working on the master plan, and there was really not anything going on. And then to see from that point to where this is now, it just is incredible. You should all be commended on how great of a job you did, and really your local entities and the state should be very thankful for the time and the effort that you dedicate to this very important mission. With that, I'm going to close out. I do have a few handouts I'm just going to leave up at the front that really outline some of the things I've talked about, goes into more detail on some of the open records laws and open meetings laws. Always available to answer questions. There's also information in there about rulemaking and things like that that really don't apply to this board, but it may apply to some other boards that you sit on. May be helpful in that respect too. I'll set those up front. Again, it's really my pleasure to come here occasionally and talk to you folks. And thank you for inviting me. I'm open. If anybody has any questions, happy to respond.
One quick question. What's your issue with our Department of Homeland Security and Emergency Management? I doubt this will ever be an issue, but like confidentiality or like client privilege, do you represent the board or DPS, or does a member, contact you and have that confidentiality?
Yeah, and that's a really good question, because that puts me really in the same position that you're in. I represent the Department of Public Safety. I represent this board. I represent the Racing and Gaming Commission. I represent the ICN. Just some of the different groups that I represent. And yes, so when I'm doing business with the board and having discussions with that, and if there's a privilege issue, yes, those conversations would be privileged. Ultimately, I act in the state's interest. So if ICN and Homeland Security get in a fight over something, that may be, yeah. Apparently more likely than I would have thought. If that were to happen, a lot of that ends up getting decided by, and how that is addressed gets decided by my boss, the governor's office, things of that nature. And I know you know how that works. So, but yes, there is the attorney-client privilege with respect to our communications. Certainly not in an open meeting setting like this, but if we're discussing, if we had litigation that we were involved in, we went into closed session, all of that information would be protected by privilege, would also be protected, and you folks would also be subject to those confidentiality rules. I can't disclose those confidential communications, nor can you. Anything else? All right, well, thanks again. And again, I'm always available for any questions. And good luck going forward, and everything continues to run smoothly. I'll see you again next year.
Great. Thank you, Jeff. Are there any questions for Jeff at all?
I would just say that with the success that he mentioned, the system having, it does make it more desirable for others to participate with. So we do anticipate some challenges or some additional interpretation, that maybe more so than what we'd experienced in the last couple of years. I'm sure you were heavily involved early, and then we may have had a slower period as it's building, but it seems like success brings attention and brings other people that want to participate, and there are rules to doing so. So in advance, thanks for your help with those tricky issues that lie ahead.
You're very welcome.
Yeah, we definitely re-engaged, that's for sure. Any other questions? Hearing none, I'll take a motion for adjournment.
I'll make that motion.
All right, all those in favor? Aye. Thank you all, appreciate everyone's time.